Welcome to the Power of Her podcast. I'm Dawn Sinkula, and I'm so glad that you're here. So grab your coffee or your wine, get cozy, and let's dive in. Welcome, everybody, to the Power of Her. Today, we have a beautiful guest, Joclyn Kilpatrick, who is my own personal yoga instructor, mentor, teacher, and the owner of Willow Soul, the most wonderful, I would say, yoga studio that I've been to here locally. But welcome, Joclyn, to the Power of Her podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so we're going to get started by hearing Joclyn's story of how she got into this yoga space and the entrepreneurship space, because it is a journey, much like all of ours, and where we didn't start in this field or we didn't start doing what we're doing today. We kind of, evolved there. So Joclyn, tell us how you got to this place where, yoga is now your full-time job.
Well, my passion for yoga started, I think, over 10 years ago now. I was working in corporate America, and I was pregnant with my daughter, Willow. And I started seeking out yoga classes because I was having, this discomfort. My body was changing.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to a yoga class, and at the end of the class, we ended in tree pose, and I had this rush of chills that just came over my body. And I've done several different types of exercise throughout my life, but I never had that deep connection before.
Yeah.
So it was like this ping, it was like I knew there was something more, and I had no idea what that meant. So then fast forward, after having my daughter, that really changed my life, changed my outlook on life, as I'm sure it does for many women.
Right.
And I ended up going through a divorce. And when I went through my divorce, something was just poking like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
you should go to yoga teacher training. And I had no idea why. I mean, I barely had a yoga practice. I just knew I loved it. I wasn't consistent. I went, but I wasn't consistent. So that's where my journey really started, and it deepened within my 200-hour. I gave myself a lot of time to get through that program. And I wasn't even sure if I was going to teach.
Yeah.
And then I started coming to Live True Yoga in St. Michael, met Nicole, and she wouldn't let up. She pushed me, out of my comfort zone to do it, and she hired me. And then there was just this voice inside my head that just kept saying, keep going, and I was working full time, raising 2 kids. I remarried, so I had help. I wasn't alone.
Yeah.
But I
But
was
still.
teaching yoga really as much as I could.
Yeah.
And as I continued to teach, there were times where I thought about stepping out, but there was still that little voice that said, keep going. And then before I knew it, I just had this impulse to open a studio. And within 2 to 3 years of that little nudge, it evolved.
And here you are.
Yeah.
Wow. So what shifting careers and starting a heart-led business, right, takes a lot of courage, right? And what do you think has been one of the hardest parts about stepping into entrepreneurship, and kind of how did you manage moving through some of that? I mean, I don't think that journey is over for anybody, right?
No.
At this point, it's an ongoing journey of entrepreneurship. But like myself, I was also in corporate, right? And then switching to, a job where you're self-sufficient, you're the one responsible for all the things. Mine wasn't necessarily a heart-led business, right? It was more, yeah, I'm good at this sort of thing. But tell me a little bit about that hardest part, stepping into the entrepreneurship, especially when it isn't something that maybe you've done all your life or something that you've, kind of grown up doing.
So when I made the choice to open the studio, I was still working for corporate. And I worked in higher education for a majority of my career. At the end of my career at corporate and higher ed, it was more of a sales-based type of role.
Mm,
And I was lacking that heartfelt connection that I had had before when I was more student-facing.
yeah.
So I had to work both. And I worked really hard. So I worked full-time, but it was from home, which was helpful. But I taught, when I opened, I taught anywhere from 12 to 15 classes a week because I was always trying to keep overhead costs down.
Yeah.
So it was pretty stressful, but the hardest part was my heart wasn't in my corporate job anymore.
Mm.
I felt like I was just showing up and going through the moves like a puppet. My heart was fully in the studio. So I would every morning, I taught all the 5:15 a.m. classes. I would come to my mat and I would pray. And I prayed for a solution.
Mm.
And it was really interesting because shortly after I opened, I think it was about 4 months after I opened, we learned that our positions at corporate were being eliminated. And I could choose to either apply for my job at the university, or I could take a severance. And
Hmm.
so I took that severance, and that was a
Right.
big leap, but I was sure, just as sure as I was when I made the decision to move to Minnesota from Michigan, as sure as I was when I opened up the yoga studio. I knew in my heart it was like this. I can't be the only person that feels this when it's a solid yes. And I'm a Libra, so I'm constantly like, I don't know, weighing between, two things is really hard, but
Yeah.
there's been a few times in my life where there's been a solid yes.
Yes.
And this was a solid yes for me, just to transition into my role full time as a yoga teacher and a yoga studio owner. And it took faith,
Yeah.
and it took courage, because
Yeah.
I've been so responsible since I moved here for the most part. Um, and having that comfy corporate paycheck and the benefits and the 401k, letting go of all that it's
So
still to
hard.
this day. It's been almost 3 years, and there's still times where I'm uncomfortable and I kind of crave it. And there
Yeah.
have been times where I thought about going back and still doing both. And
Mm.
I haven't.
Yeah.
I just keep
Yeah.
trusting and going.
Well, that kind of leads me to my next question about sort of the soulful side of your business, right? And the work that you do and holding space for teaching and guiding. And you said you're a Libra, but how do you sort of do that while still having the practical side of running a business? Because you do have to pay the bills, you do have to do all the stuff, right? And there's a lot of things, we call them left brain, right brain type of things that are required. And a lot of the yoga practice is, holding space and teaching people and guiding people, and it's a little bit more of those softer skills. How do you sort of balance that soulful side of your work with those other softer skills?
Well, balance should be my middle name. That's what that is my life. Um, and that's a great question. I think that my business oriented mind and my uh, tenacity, I've
Mhm.
always been one to show up and make it happen. I've
Mm.
started my career in sales, and it was a sink or swim type of
Yeah.
sales position. So I learned a lot about swimming. So I know that, yoga, there's a lot of yoga businesses that fail. And
Yeah.
it's because they just, they're about love, and if it works, it'll work. But you can't live
Right.
like that. You have to have that side where you're focused. And it's hard to focus sometimes. It really is, especially just being your own business owner and having,
Yeah.
you know, uh, flexibility.
Yeah.
But I know what needs to be done every week. I know that I have to do my marketing. I know that I have to show up for my classes. I know that I have to, you have to push. As a
Yeah.
yoga studio owner, you can't just sit back and hope that it all work out. It's a constant push. I don't think I realized that when I stepped into this business, how much of a
Yeah.
push it is.
Yeah.
Um, but I love it so much. I love the yoga, and I believe in what it does for people and how it transforms lives. That's what helps me to keep pushing and
Yeah.
keep showing up on the business side in the way that I need to. Does that answer your question? Does
Yeah,
that make
it
sense?
does. It
Okay.
does. It makes sense. And I think, you're absolutely right. I think a lot of people in the yoga space or in the woo space, I call it, oftentimes just hope that it's all going to work out.
Yeah.
Right? And they have this kind of like, and I love that about people. I wish I could be more of that. That's why I did a lot of the yoga stuff and why I do yoga and why I went to the teacher training, because I need to work on the other side of myself and kind of slowing myself down. But there's got to be that balance between the two. And I think that, you've clearly done that, and you've been able to do that and be successful at the same time. And I think it's going to kind of lead me into my other question around creating that space for other people to really help them with this. And so, as you've gone through your own journey at, figuring out the corporate and now in this space, how do you sort of intentionally cultivate that sense of community with Willow Soul or within your sphere? Let's just call it that, because there's going to be some online things you're going to be doing eventually as well, but creating safe space for other people to grow and heal, and cultivating that sense of community when so many of us come to yoga trying to find something that may or may not be there.
So the words that come up for me are surrender, for one, but also peace, because in order to cultivate peace and cultivate peace within a yoga community where people can come and let go, I have to own that peace within myself. So if I don't show up for myself with practice, and I don't mean the physical practice, yes, the physical practice is also important to me, but it's more of, for me, it's starting my day intentionally with grounding. And it doesn't, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like it happens every day, because it doesn't, but I do try almost every day to ground, whether it is sitting in front of my window in my bedroom and lighting a candle with Palo Santo and just quieting my mind, reading something that is, more spiritual, or it's me stepping outside and feeling my bare feet on the ground, and closing my eyes and having my prayer. I have to have some sort of a prayer and a way to calm down my nervous system every day, because if I don't do that, then I'm faking it.
Yeah.
And people can feel that.
Yeah.
When you come to a yoga class and your teacher is frazzled, everything is energy.
Yeah.
Your students feel it.
Yeah.
So that's important to me, because I take this very seriously. Even though I tell people not to take life so seriously, but I take my job seriously.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And I don't want people to just come in here and get a workout.
Yeah.
I want people to come in here and connect to the truest, most loving part of themselves. So I have to facilitate that in my own way, through my energy, through my own prayer, through my connection, and love.
Yeah. That's great. And I know you've shared stories that I've heard, but share some stories here with us of people or things that you've witnessed in your students that continually inspire you to kind of keep going, without giving names or anything like that. What have you seen work well when people actually do, to use your word, surrender or have that peace? And how do you see that kind of playing out in your students?
So as a teacher, I can witness it. I can see it in them. When they're, fully in it, there's a look, they're not listening to even anything that I'm saying. They got to wherever they got to in their pose on their mat, but I could say something hilarious and they're likely not even going to hear me. And that, I love that, when I can witness that as a teacher. I've had, so many experiences where because one of the biggest challenges as a yoga teacher is when people leave, you're like, well, did they like that? Or,
Yeah, right.
But
why are they going? Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I have had, a lot of people cry,
Mhm.
and share with me how, the impact that it's had in their life, and, what they're going through. And that means the world to me. I
Yeah.
don't expect it. I don't expect that their life is going to change from a class that I teach, but if I can help them get to any sort of release of
Yeah.
emotion or connection within themselves, then I feel
Like you've done it. Yeah.
like my job,
Yeah.
I feel my purpose.
And it's so hard, I think, too, when, we're in such a fast-paced, tech-driven sort of world where there's just not a lot of space or time for yoga or mindfulness. I think it's important to experience those, one, to keep yourself going, right?
Mhm.
But then also to ensure that people have that experience and are able to see even just a little glimmer in themselves when they come to practice, or, like you said, they kind of get into their own space, or they are sort of like, you know, in the woo-woo world, right? And I've had it happen to me many times where, somebody's said something in the studio and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What were you saying? Because you
Yeah.
are in your zone, right? And I think it is amazing to be able to do that. But okay, I'm going to shift us a little bit to some things about, life lessons and things like that. And, I think for a lot of our listeners, timing doesn't always make sense to things, right? And you talked about that too, and like trust the timing, and something said yes to you and things like that. What advice would you give to someone who maybe has that pull, or is having that sense of doing something different, but not really understanding how to hear themselves or how to take advantage of that calling, whether it be in yoga or otherwise?
Keep seeking, keep
Mm,
listening, keep moving towards what lights you up. Um, if you're in, not everybody has to go to work every day and feel this sense of purpose.
yeah,
They can go to work and they can collect their paycheck and they can feel fulfilled and take care of their family and find fulfillment and purpose through other aspects of their life.
yeah,
If you are the type of person that wants to feel fulfilled through the work that you do every day, get quiet, keep listening to yourself internally, and keep listening out. And know that every conversation that you have with another person is a mirror. It's a reflection back to you. And
mm,
trust in that. The first time that I thought I was going to open up a yoga studio, I was obsessed. Okay. Pushing, listening. I was listening to all these podcasts and I was thinking about my purpose and what am I doing here? And this isn't right my job isn't right. I can't live my life like this. And I was chasing for like 2.5 years. And
yeah,
finally, I just had to check myself and
yeah,
say, knock it off, because
yeah,
timing is everything. Timing is key. And I actually heard that once in a meditation. And what is for you, what is meant for you will not miss you. Trust that
mm,
and you will find your way. Um, and be patient, because the more you push, the harder it's going to be. When it's
yeah,
meant to be, you're not going to be pushing so hard. Things will start to fall into place and it's going to be divine timing. And I trust that and I witnessed it for myself.
yeah, yeah. That's amazing. I like what you said. Will, what is meant for you will not miss you. I think
Yep.
that should be the name of this podcast because
Yeah.
that's a good, I mean, that is great. I mean, and I don't think a lot of people get quiet enough in their own self to be able to recognize that we are all very driven, hard, want this, or, something kind of lights us up and we go, go, go. Not all of us, but a lot of us that are entrepreneurs do that. And, it takes a special kind of person to be able to quiet things down and to be able to listen. And I know you're really into doing a lot in addition to yoga, you're into doing a lot of breath work. And I know that that is a big part of your practice. Can you talk a little bit about what breath work is and why that has helped you so much? I don't know if a lot of people understand what breath work is, and I'd love to just kind of explain that piece of it.
Sure. So breath work is wide open there, but it's essentially sitting down and following um different ways of breathing. So for example, it could be breathing in through the nose, breathing out the mouth for a period of time, and then doing some breath holds where you inhale, you hold it, and then you exhale and you hold it at the bottom of the exhale. And in those moments where you're holding, I personally find clarity. Sometimes I feel things like it's a rush. In my opinion, it's the best high you can get. It's getting high on your own supply. It's free. There are numerous YouTube videos out there that you can look up. I love Breathe with Sandy. He's my absolute favorite because he does all his own music. But
Mm,
that's become my way of meditating almost, because I'm focusing on my breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, when you're having a rough day, they always say, well, just take a deep breath and let go. Yeah.
Yeah,
That makes you feel better.
it
So when you
does.
allocate 5 to 10 minutes a day to just focus on your breathing,
Yeah.
it's going to help the rest of your day run smoothly. Or in the middle of the day, if you're tired, you can do breath work
Yeah.
and you can feel whoop, like you just had 3 cups of coffee and it's
Yeah.
nasty and you're not going to have to crash and burn afterwards. So it's just so healthy and it's changed my life. And when you do it consistently, it becomes addicting in the best way. It's something good to be addicted to.
Yeah. I love that. And I think that's part of a practice that helps you get quiet and hear those voices sometimes, or hear that
Yeah.
calling that maybe wasn't there before. Right. Okay, so I'm going to push Joclyn to do her own breath work and get it out on YouTube so she doesn't have to push it to somebody else, but that Joclyn gives her own breath work that we can all follow. I think that would be a good thing because Joclyn's really, really good at this. So I want her to do her own breath work YouTube video so we can all follow her in that process as well. But we'll get to that soon enough.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's talk about this as we kind of wrap up. So if a listener is in the middle of change, okay, maybe it's a career shift, a personal transition, or just simply a feeling of being lost or whatever, what would you want them to hear from you today specifically?
Don't give up on your dream. And trust. Trust the process, trust the timing, and try to surrender to the timing of your life. For me, the word surrender helps me to just kind of let go and allow what needs to happen to happen. And I know that can be conflicting for go-getters, for people who are entrepreneurs, when they're like, well, no, I have to show up. I have to make this happen. Yes, you show up. But if something doesn't go through, surrender. Know that right there was a blessing. If
Yeah.
something doesn't happen, it's a blessing. And everything that does happen should be for your highest and best, and set that intention. And when your intentions are good and pure, the good and the pure will follow.
Yeah. That's great. That's amazing. That's a great way to end. And I think all of us can learn a lot about just being still and surrendering and calming our mind and doing breath work and all of the things that you've mentioned today. It's been so helpful. And I think, there's a lot of listeners out there that are, in that space and they need something to sort of anchor themselves to. And I've personally found that yoga has been that for me. I went through Joclyn's 200-hour this last year, and it's just been life-changing. And I think it's really helped me sort of get a practice of calming and being able to settle myself a little bit, so that a lot of things have come to me, just what you said. And I don't know that I would have had some of those aha moments had I not been able to surrender, or had I not been able to. And I don't think you have to go through yoga teacher training to get that level of surrender. I think you can do that with a mindful practice, your breath work, your yoga practice, however it works, meditation, whatever works for you. But I think you've given us some great examples of, yeah, you can go from corporate to being yoga. You can be in corporate and still do mindfulness. You can be in yoga and still have a push, like all of these things I think are really important. And thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I can be reached at at hello@willowsoulyoga.com. All my contact information is at willowsoulyoga.com, so you can reach out to us anytime. We offer yoga classes, bar, strength, Pilates. And we also offer lots of workshops for this whole purpose that we talked about today: getting quiet, getting connected to yourself. I have a workshop coming up on Friday. I think it's Virgo ritual.
Yeah.
And it's breath work, a little bit of gentle yoga movement, meditation, and a gong healing. So,
and I love the gong healing. So
yeah.
amazing.
We have them every month, and
One
sound
of my
healings.
favorites. Yeah, it's amazing.
So
Amazing.
offer
And
a
we will
lot.
drop all of her contact information in the show notes so that you can reach out on social media platforms. You can reach out via email. I definitely encourage you to follow on social channels because she's got a lot of really good stuff on there as well. And we are encouraging Joclyn to get into the online space so she can share even more of this with the world. And I think this is something that we'll see in her future as well. So thank you so much for joining us. This has been amazing.
Thank you so much, Dawn. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.